Back to the Alex at Bat podcast. I am Jason. I'm joined here by Alex, and it is 2017. We are back in 2017. We've just had our turkey and our stuffing, and we've watched a ton of football. And we are going to break down the Thanksgiving Day results from 2017 because that's what year it is right now. First up, we have the Vikings versus the Lions. Vikings pulled out the game 30-23.
Is it panic
Matthew
time for
Stafford
Lions, or is the
tried to
Vikings
bring his
for
team
real?
back. They were facing deficits of 13-0, 20-3, 27-10, and every time they came back and closed that gap, but they were unable to in the end. What do you think was the difference maker for the Vikings?
So I actually do have some questions I need to be answered for this, but first, I think the defensive line. I think they won up front and on the offensive side of the ball and the defensive side of the ball. You know, games are won and lost on the offensive line and defensive line, and sure enough, that's been proven today. And I really think the thing that really concerns me the most is how the Lions are going to be for the rest of the year. They've already lost six. They already lost 5 games, and they have. If they lose like 2 more, there's no way they're making the playoffs. Or even if they lose 1 more, I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. I know Matthew Stafford is a good quarterback. He obviously doesn't have all the pieces he needs to be a good quarterback, but that's not an excuse how we played. You know, there were some missed throws he had. There were some, hard, bad play by the offensive line. I know he was under pressure a lot, especially Everson Griffin. I think he had like 1 or 2 sacks, and he actually is having a child. He actually showed on his T-shirt that he was going to have a baby after he sacked Matthew Stafford. So I really think that the Lions do need to get better up front, and I think they need more playmakers. I would say.
Yeah, I know that they struggle in the run game, which adds a lot of pressure to Stafford.
Absolutely.
Puts him sitting back in the pocket, prey to linebackers, and that was, the 2017, the other day, was no exception to that. I mean, you got Amir Abdullah and you have Theo Riddick, who, to quote an article, show flashes of brilliance, but they're not really delivering on what they need to as far as relieving some of the pressure off of Stafford.
Absolutely. I think the running game is a big issue. Amir Abdullah, that's actually who the Cardinals wanted to get instead of David Johnson. I think so far that hasn't been a bad choice because I don't think they've had a running back go over 100 yards since 2014. So like about 3 years ago.
2013.
Oh, 2013.
Reggie Bush.
Oh my. I think that really proves how bad.
4 years ago.
I think the issue is the Lions management with Bob Quinn and that owner, that staff and everything. I think the problem is not finding a good running back because Matthew Stafford is having like 300 yards passing like every game because, and I'm not trying to take any credit away from Matthew Stafford. He's a great quarterback, but the problem is when you don't have a good running game, you're going to have to pass the ball more and your passing yards will go up for sure.
Right. So will your interceptions.
And so will your interceptions. That's the downside of it. So I really think that that's the issue they need to fix, and I think the offensive line is one of the bigger problems.
I think that's a good segue. That lack of running game is a good segue into the Chargers-Cowboys game.
Are the Cowboys finished, or are the Chargers looking scary?
Cowboys and the Lions, it's kind of an apples to apples as far as the running game's concerned. Ezekiel Elliott still is out, and he's had the suspension obviously this year, and it showed in the game because it totally detracted. It put Prescott in a very similar situation as Stafford, spending time in the pocket, throwing a lot of passes, trying to push passes through, and that leads to picks and things like that.
So I really think the big issue I have with Dak Prescott is the 8 turnovers in 3 games without Ezekiel Elliott has been the big issue, I would say. I think the problem with Dak Prescott is when he doesn't have the security guard, Ezekiel Elliott, in his backfield, is that he has to look, the coaching staff, Jason Garrett, Scott Linehan, the quarterback's coach, says, look, Dak, we're going to need you to throw the ball a lot today. I know this is something you're not used to, but we're going to have to do it. So far, he can't. He won't do it. And the problem with that is the receivers are going to have to get open more. They're going to have to make more big plays. And the problem is you have an aging receiver in Des Bryant who had 3 catches for 31 yards last night. And pretty much, I think the problem with Dak is he's losing his confidence. I could see that for sure. Like, he's forcing passes. He's throwing inaccurate passes once again to Des Bryant. They really had only one big play, and that was to Terrence Williams, who I really thought shouldn't have even been on the roster at all this year. I think they should have went out and got another receiver in the free agency or the draft. But I really think that Ezekiel Elliott is so important to this team, to the point where now they can't win games.
Yeah, I think obviously he is on the offensive side of the ball, and if there's a lack of that support on the offensive side of the ball, that then puts more pressure on the defense. And the defense struggled yesterday. No sacks. Sean Lee is out with injury. So there's that. But then compounding all of those problems on the Cowboys side, you have Phillip Rivers, who's just crushing the Cowboys with 8 passes of 20-plus yards yesterday. One was like a 46-yarder, and he was just crushing it. So, 434 yards, 3 touchdowns, and no interceptions. I mean, that's just a recipe for a win.
I also think that the Chargers were leading the Cowboys 3-0 at halftime, but the problem once again was the kicking game for the Chargers was really bad. Nick Novak, I think he got injured during the middle of the game, which really struggled. They should have, and I think that one play was like 4th and 14, a short swing, short screen pass to Austin Eckler that went for 13 yards. They were 1 yard short, and I'm telling you is that the kicking, like if they had a good kicker, I think the score would have been a lot, higher. It should have not even been 6-20. It should have been more like 6-42. Like, that's how dominant Phillip Rivers played. And you got to give credit though. Like, they started off 0-4, and the reason they started 0-4 wasn't because of Phillip Rivers' bad play. It was special teams. They missed kicks. Like, they should have beaten Denver. The home opener game, I think it was like 27-24. Was a blocked field goal because they had problems in the kicking game, and their records should be a lot better than what they are right now.
Right.
And I think what the Cowboys is like with Jerry Jones, and I think the way how he manages the team is horrible. Like, let's be honest. Like, they kept all the receivers from last year that weren't even great. They were okay at best. And I think that I heard this one quote from Bill Parcells. He was actually a former Cowboys coach. Mm-hmm. It comes down, I think I don't remember the exact quote, but I know something like, the general manager is the one who's buying the groceries. Have you heard of it? Does that sound like, do you get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
Right there, like,
they control the ingredients.
Yeah, they control the ingredients. They control what player stays, what player goes.
Right.
And I think that the problem was bringing back all the receivers because, all the receivers didn't play bad, but didn't play great. And they're all getting a year older because, when a year goes by, they get a year older. Like, Bryant is in year 8, Beasley is in year 6, Williams is in year 5, and the receivers are getting older. They're, starting to age in a bad way. They're not making big plays anymore. The Cowboys offense isn't making big plays, and I really think that Dak Prescott is struggling when he's asked to throw the ball. When his team or when his coaches are telling him, we need you to throw the football, he can't do that.
He can't deliver on it.
He can't deliver.
Speaking of not delivering, Giants, Redskins 20, Giants 10. Basically, I mean, if you look at Eli Manning's stats for the night, it kind of puts things into perspective. He throws for 113 yards. He's 13 out of 27. And I know he had a pick or two in there. The thing with them is that, they're playing 4-down football, and then they're off the field after they punt. And it just was punt after punt after punt. They never got the engine revved. They never got on track. They never showed flashes of brilliance. And there just weren't enough highlights to really give you faith that moving forward they're going to be any more impressive than they already are, which is not at all. Redskins, obviously it was a more solid performance by the Redskins. What are your thoughts on either side of that football game?
I really think the problem with the Giants is the injuries they've had all year. You know, they've lost Odell Beckham out for the year.
That's a huge one.
Brandon Marshall out for the year.
Right.
And I think that the real top receiver is their tight end, Evan Engram. He's a first-round pick out of Ole Miss. He went in the first round.
There's a lot of weapons on the sideline.
A lot of weapons on the sideline, and I think that the problem is that they don't really have a number one receiver that can go against a number one corner. They just don't have it. I think the problem is that Giants are lacking talent. You know, in the NFL, talent wins games. You need talent to win games.
Yeah, I mean, and as far as like getting that talent surrounding Eli Manning, the clock is ticking on him. I mean, it's 2017. How many more years do we think this guy's going to be out there going for a third ring? So if they're gonna get that talent, they've either got to acquire it by outside means, or they got to get those three aforementioned people back from the IR.
Absolutely.
Or disabled list, whatever it is.
Yeah, the injury reserve, and I really think that too. They just lost I think they lost Janoris Jenkins, their number one corner for the year. So they're already starting to lose talent.
Both sides.
Yeah, both sides of the ball. I mean, it's just insane how many injuries they've had, and the reason is Eli Manning offensive line is horrible.
Oh.
Let's keep that real. His offensive line isn't good, and that for sure isn't helping. They've had like guards playing tackle. You know, they had an undrafted free agent against one of the best pass rushers on the on Washington side of the ball, Ryan Kerrigan. And of course, you know, he had like 2 sacks last night.
Yeah.
And he was dominating. Yeah. That was literally dominating because 91 for Washington, yeah.
For the Washington Redskins 2017.
Yes. And then I really think that the problem was for sure is how dominant their defense was. And I really started to think Kirk Cousins didn't play that bad last night, but I definitely think that he's making mistakes here and there, and I think that needs to be corrected. And I really think that the Washington really has a good chance against the Cowboys next week because of they're doing really good against teams with losing records, and now the Cowboys are 5-6, and that is going to be really tough. And it's really going to show how the Cowboys, if they really can win without Sean Lee and without Ezekiel Elliott, this is the week for the Cowboys to prove it. And Kirk Cousins needs to take advantage of that defense. If Sean Lee, since Sean Lee looks like he's not going to return against Washington because he's out with a hamstring injury, he has to take advantage. You know,
he needs to do what he did against the Giants.
Yeah, and literally he has to throw to guys like Orlando Scandrick. He's a 10th-year corner out of Boise State. He got torched against Keenan Allen. Jordan Lewis has been struggling. I've seen especially against Devontae Adams back in Week 5 when Aaron Rodgers was healthy at that time. I know he's injured right now, but so one play was like the game winner against Jordan Lewis, Devontae Adams. So first, Aaron Rodgers saw that Jordan Lewis was playing low shoulder. He threw ball low, so it was easy breakup, and then he was playing low shoulder. I think he was like playing low shoulder again, and then Aaron Rodgers threw it up high. And easy touch, and I think the problem is that he's predictable in what he's going to do against the receiver. And I think Orlando Scandrick is one of those guys who is not good because he's given up plenty of big plays. You know, I could go on and on. I remember one play back in Week 3 against Larry Fitzgerald, one of the great receivers.
Yep.
Hard to cover, but he gave up a 37-yard gain. He should have even intercepted that ball, but I think the problem is how the defense is giving up way too many big plays, and I really think that Kirk Cousins needs to throw the ball far down the field, no yards after catch, just throwing it long every play.
Yeah,
and eventually it's going to get in the corner's head, and that's the way how you're going to beat them.
And it could be that they were like whatever it was yesterday, 31 degrees out. But I mean, I just recall, especially in that Skins game, a lot of drop passes, like a lot of Kirk Cousins passes that should have been caught, not necessarily for touchdowns or anything like that, but just for yardage. So hopefully that was a climate kind of thing, and then once they moving forward, they'll have a little bit more steadier hands.
Absolutely. So do you want to do a preview of NFL games on Sunday, November 2017. Sure. So we first got I really wanted to preview this game badly, is the Broncos and Raiders. So Broncos just fired their offensive coordinator, Raiders fired their defensive coordinator. And who do you think is the bigger mess this year? Who do you think, would you say?
Give me my options, please.
So we got the Broncos. They're really struggling to find a quarterback. The Raiders do have a quarterback, but they just don't have a great defense. And Michael Crabtree and Amari Cooper aren't making big plays. So who would you say is in a bigger loss? I mean, like, who's struggling the more?
I mean, if you're counting quarterback as the most important position on the football team, or at least you're going to argue that point, I think it's a solid argument for the Cowboys, or excuse me, the Broncos being the most, the furthest to go, the biggest hill to climb.
Absolutely, and I think the problem with the Broncos is, again, they don't have a lot of big playmakers. Mm-hmm. Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders. Emmanuel Sanders is their only really big playmaker.
Okay.
Demaryius Thomas just he's a good player, he's a good receiver, but I think the problem is he drop passes.
Yeah.
And inconsistency with all the three quarterbacks and this is going to be the third quarterback they started, not because of injury, because
Who's
of
it now?
Paxton Lynch. He's second year in the NFL. Yikes. He didn't play great last year, and it was his rookie year. So this is really going to be tough for me to pick the Broncos. I'm going the Raiders all the way on this one, and I think that Derek Carr is going to take advantage of that.
I mean, if you're saying, sorry to cut you off, but I think you had mentioned that the Raiders, the defense is struggling.
Absolutely,
but a struggling defense against an offense that's not producing is not really.
Yeah, it's
like that would probably be the perfect opponent for the Raiders to take on, somebody with a struggling offense.
Oh, absolutely. And
cue the Broncos.
I also think too is that the problem with the Broncos defense, they've been so good all year. Von Miller, Shaq Barrett, and the whole defensive line, they win up front almost every play.
Right.
But the problem is the inconsistency of the offense is stopping the defense from making big plays. And I don't ever want to give many excuses to the defense, but except I think the problem is they get frustrated, they're tired, they're out there almost every quarter, like a lot too, because the offense just goes like 3 and out, and they get tired, they're not making big plays. And I think the problem is that I think the quarterback play is really setting back this team for sure.
Sounds like it's almost going to be the Raiders offense versus the Denver's defense. Like that's really going to be the tail of the tape, because it doesn't sound like, if you flip that, it doesn't sound like the Raiders defense and the Denver's offense has a whole lot to offer as far as impact on the game. Like most of that impact is going to be felt when Raiders are out on the field offensively, and then you got the strong Broncos defense. Like that'll be the game to watch.
Oh, and there's also one thing too. So last year, do you know the guy, remember the thing, Michael Crabtree between Aqib Talib? Aqib Talib snatched Michael Crabtree's chain last year. Like ripped it off.
No, I don't recall.
Yeah, so that's going to be a good matchup for sure. And then you have the tackle Alan Barbe, I think his name is, against Khalil Mack, one of the best pass rushers, and he's a backup guard. Alan Barbe is. So that's really good. I think Denver's offense, I think this is going to be like a matchup. It's not really going to be a good matchup. It's probably one of the low matchups, one of the boring matchups to say the least, because we've seen all year, Denver's offense have struggled, especially against bad defenses too. Like teams that are in like the bottom, to 25 and below. Like it was just too much turning the ball over. They've turned the ball over at least once in every game this year, and they've already played 11 games already. So that means they've turned it over at least once in every game. So that's probably way more than 20 times they've turned the ball over. Counting fumbles, interceptions. And I really think that the lack of play from the quarterback is really affecting the receivers. I also think that it's affecting, I think it's affecting a lot.
It affects everything.
It affects everything. Like a team without a quarterback affects so much.
Even the defense starts to feel it after a while, because they know they're responsible for basically bringing the game home. So that added pressure, it's that pressure's not being displaced evenly. The defense, I mean, obviously the offense feels bad about it, but if they're not leveling up and they're not up to the challenge, it's the defense that takes the brunt of the damage every time.
Absolutely. Before we move on, I just want to bring this up too. Was a couple weeks ago was Broncos versus Patriots, and it was the Patriots quarterback Tom Brady. Defense probably knows like, oh shoot, like we're gonna lose. Like, let's be real, our quarterback is not beating Tom Brady, like because he's too inconsistent. He turns the ball over, and he didn't play bad, but
Paxton.
It was Brock Osweiler that week. He had an interception. He had 221 yards passing, and he literally threw I think the ball 18 times. And I really think the defense obviously probably knew hey, we're gonna lose. Just play the best you can. Just give 100% every play. That's all we're gonna probably.
They got any good running backs?
Who, the Patriots offense or the Broncos offense?
The Broncos.
The Broncos do have a good running back, but there's just a difference between good and something special.
Right.
There's nothing really special about the running back. C.J. Anderson, he's a good running back, but to have to say someone's a great running back, you have to have a special trait about him.
Yeah, you got to be a problem.
Yeah. He's not really a problem, I would say, because when he's played really top 10 defenses, he's not running. His yards really go down. They're not feeding him the ball because he's not making big plays in the run game against good defenses.
Yeah, I was going to say good defenses aren't restructuring their entire defensive schemes around him.
Absolutely. So, and I really think that the offensive line has been playing bad. So that doesn't help. But I think the offensive line is literally feeling it to the point where this guy got to get the ball out quick. And the problem is that they're holding on the ball too long, and it's just a bunch of problems with that Broncos offense. Mm-hmm. People don't even understand how much. I think that's how it affects everything. And now, obviously, it literally costs their offensive coordinator his job. He got fired, and then they had Bill Musgrave. He was the quarterback's coach all year, and now he's going to be stepping as an interim offensive coordinator. And then I was thinking one more. We're going to discuss about maybe one or two. We'll discuss two more matchups this week coming up. So we got the Steelers versus Packers Sunday Night Football game. I really do like about the Steelers is how they're winning and how they're finding ways. But I don't like the way how they win. Because they barely beat the Colts, who don't even have Andrew Luck. They have Jacoby Brissett as their quarterback. And they barely beat
this year, 2017.
Yeah,
20-17. I didn't know that. I didn't know Jacoby Brissett was playing.
Yeah, and it was 20-17 Steelers win. So I'm really concerned on how the Steelers are winning. Not that they're winning, it's how they win. And then you have obviously the inconsistency in the run game.
You're saying you're not necessarily concerned about how they're winning so far. You're more concerned about how they're going to win moving forward based on their performance? Because, a win is a win is a win.
Oh, absolutely.
But I guess what you're saying is projecting forward, looking forward, the matchups. Do they have matchups in the immediate future that really scare you for the Steelers?
Oh, 100%. Especially the game against the Patriots. If you're playing that way, how they played against the Colts,
they're going to get shellacked.
I really think that Tom Brady's just going to take advantage of that, as he always does. He can. Yeah, the thing about Tom Brady is that he finds ways how to take advantage of a defense,
right?
And he will take advantage of that offense. He'll take advantage of that defense,
right.
He will.
And to be fair too, Bill Belichick. That's the general. He's gonna find ways. And Tom's specialty is also, in addition to identifying those issues, he's the soldier. He's the one that has to go out and shoot the bullets. So Belichick's going to come up with obviously a good plan, and Tom's going to go out and execute. Is what you're saying against a woeful Steelers.
Yes,
or Steelers that aren't winning by convincingly.
Absolutely, and then also earlier in the year they barely beat the Bears. And they actually lost against the Bears. I meant to say it was 24-30, and it was a big time run in overtime. And I really think that it's concerning. But on the other side, I will say Steelers are going to win this game only because Aaron Rodgers is not playing once again. Brett Hundley is playing, so I really think that they're obviously going to win. Probably they're going to find a way, probably make it close, but they're still winning this game. I really think that Le'Veon Bell. They need to feed him more. because last week he had like 46 yards. But they did a really good job last week getting him involved in the passing game. That's what's really been so cool is seeing how, because usually running backs are not known to be involved in the passing game, but Le'Veon Bell is getting involved.
Got good hands.
He got good hands in the backfield, and they're finding ways to get him involved. And I really think that that's really good, especially because defenses are not going to be prepared to see running backs catching the ball like over 5 times a game and stuff like that. And then the Packers defense, it hasn't been bad, but obviously without Rodgers, it feels like there's no hope. And then our next matchup will be the last matchup that we'll discuss is Ravens versus Texans. So Joe Flacco, quarterback, against Tom Savage. So once again, Joe Flacco has been terrible this year. Once again, he hasn't had a game over 300 passing yards. I don't even think he had a game over.
Is he injured? Is he fighting an injury?
He got injured during training camp. I can't remember how, but I think that really kind of slowed his production. I don't even think he had a game over 250 passing yards. Like, honestly.
Does he have a running game?
Does he have a running game?
Supporting him?
I wouldn't say he has like a really good running game because his starting running back is Alex Collins, and he's had 100-yard game, and we've already played 11. They've already played 11 games.
One 100-yard game?
One 100-yard running game.
How about targets downfield? What are the
targets
receivers
downfield
looking like?
Receivers are not looking great at all. I don't think they have even one receiver over 500 receiving yards.
How about like in the middle, tight ends?
Tight ends, they're not bad, but I think they should use them more in the passing game.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Because their receivers are just not good. It's Mike Wallace as their number one receiver. And he is not a number one receiver. He can't go against the number one corner. He's had he hasn't even caught over. The most amount of passes he's caught this year was 6. And if you're a number one receiver, you should be catching like 10.
Yeah, I was gonna say, or a dozen.
Or like a lot. If you're catching like 6 passes as your highest amount of receiving yards this late in the season, then you probably know that you're not good. Yeah,
either you're slow or Flacco doesn't like you, or something's going on. Yeah.
Yeah, and I also think that too. Like I just don't think they really have a number one receiver. I think that Mike Wallace could probably be a number 2 receiver at best. And I know early in his career, he played for the Steelers, and they had Antonio Brown. They even had Hines Ward for a couple years at that time. So they've had good players, but he's never really a good number one receiver, I'd say. And they don't have it. That's a problem. And then Flacco is struggling. He's inconsistent. He's not making big plays anymore.
When did he win the Super Bowl?
About 5 years ago, 2012. I would think February 2013. So that was around 5 years ago. And he hasn't been playing good ever since then. And I think it's creating more problems on the defense. Or giving him more plays. Just like the same thing with the Broncos. But I really do think that I do admire how good Terrell Suggs is. He's close to hitting double-digit sacks once again.
Nice.
He's a good player, and I really think that defense is strong. They got really good corners, and I really think that they're gonna find ways to win.
Right.
They've done it all year. They're the reason why they're winning games. Without that defense, Terrell Suggs rushing, you're obviously gonna. I think that's really where the credit goes down to, because I think if that offense didn't have that defense, they wouldn't be as good as they look like right now.
Sounds like the Broncos.
Yeah, but they're way worse. They haven't won a game since October 1st, 2017, and it's November 26th, 2017. So that's been almost 2 months without winning a game.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
So is that about wrap it up?
Yeah, I think we're going to wrap up our 2017 Week 12, and we will have a post-game of those Sunday games coming up. Anything you like to say, partner?
Just that I love 2017.
Go 2017. Woohoo.